Hey everybody, it's Mo at Kilauea Kreations 2, and we have a mission that we want you to join in with us. Our mission is to collectively make 1,000 paper cranes together to promote and inspire hope in these unstable times in our history. I have a question for you. Have you ever heard of the Japanese tradition of making 1,000 paper cranes? If you haven't, here it is for you. See, this tradition of making 1,000 origami paper cranes comes from the Japanese culture, and it says that if you fold 1,000 paper cranes within 1 year's time, that you'll be granted one wish or happiness and eternal good luck. The crane is an auspicious creature and has been said to represent luck and good fortune. And it also is said that they live to be 1,000 years old, and that is why 1,000 is significant in this tradition. It has become common within today's culture for groups of people to join in together to make 1,000 origami paper cranes to spread awareness of different causes. And so our desire here is that we as quilters will come together to spread hope, linking hand in hand to make 1,000 paper pieced quilt block cranes. We're gonna turn those 1,000 paper pieced cranes into a quilt, probably 2 quilts, because we probably can't fit 1,000 on one quilt because it would be humongous. And we're gonna do something special with that finished project at the end. And so this is our mission. Because of perilous times that we live in and so much uncertainties and disappointments, that we know that hope will carry us through. And so this is our desire, that we will make this together and inspire and create hope in our community and in our state and maybe even our country. All right, so join with me as I show you how to make this foundation paper piece crane. All right, everybody, step 1 is to pick up a kit from Kilauea Kreations, either Kilauea Kreations 2 or in Hilo, or Kilauea Kreations 1 in Volcano. And inside each kit, you'll have your instructions. You'll have your foundation paper piece that you're gonna build your block on. You also will have a small piece of fabric that's a 5x3. You'll have a lighter fabric than that, and it's gonna be a 5x7. You'll also have a square of muslin, and you will have a 7x11 black piece of fabric. All right, so once you get all of that, keep that together. I also want to show you some tools that you should have ready when we get to putting our block together, because they're going to be essential to your success. So we're going to need a rotary cutter of some sort. You can use a 45, you can use a 28, either one, doesn't matter, just any rotary cutter. The other thing that's useful is a wooden press, because this will help. You'll want some snips, some small scissors, maybe a seam ripper. Hopefully you don't have to use it. And then a fabric glue stick of some sort. So this one's Fons and Porter's, but there's lots of different brands out there. So it's a glue stick for fabric. Roxanne has a basting glue, so get one of those. The other thing, you want some labels, some sticky labels, doesn't matter what kind, because you're gonna wanna label your parts and pieces. And then a ruler. So I like to keep these 2 sizes on hand, kind of a smaller 6-inch wide ruler. And then I really like this guy. This is a add a quarter ruler, because we're gonna need this and it's gonna be almost essential. So, but you can also use a 1/4 inch on your big ruler if you don't have a small one. Pin cushion, essential. I like to use really thin pins. Up next to your sewing machine, you wanna keep an iron, a small ironing mat, and a cutting mat, all next to your machine. And I'll show you how that looks when we get started, all right? Okay, let's go. All right, next step. So we are going to work on cutting and labeling everything. It's It's essential to your success, all right? So we are going to take our 7 by 11 piece of black fabric, and then we are going to cut it. In the instructions, it shows you exactly how to cut it, and I'm just giving you a visual of how I did it. I measured in 4 inches, cut that piece, and then I cut all the other pieces. This is my light green, my dark green, and my light green. This is just a picture of your labels. This is kind of what I did. All right, so here we are. We're gonna cut this, our foundation paper piece pattern. You're going to go ahead and cut each piece out, and you're gonna cut around the outer black line, so I wanna explain kind of what you're looking at here. Each section has a letter, the fabric, and the fabric size to kind of help reference during the making. This dark inner part is where your fabric will show at the end, and this section on the outside is your seam allowance, all right? So as we cut these out, you kind of familiarize yourself with what you're looking at. This is B section, and you have B3, and it's going to be a light piece of fabric, and then it's going to be a 3 by 3.5 inch piece. This here is your B2, and it's a dark fabric, and it's going to be 1.5 by 3 inches. This is your B1, and it's going to be a black, and it's 3.5 inches by 2 inches. All right, so now go ahead and cut each of your pieces out. So there's B, A, C. Trust me, I went to kindergarten. All right, so cut all your pieces out, and now we'll get cutting on the fabric. Next, we have our fabric, and we're going to cut that. We have our black fabric, we have the fabric that we are calling dark in the pattern, and then we have the fabric that we're calling light on the pattern. And this shows you how we're cutting all of them. This is my labels, and this is kind of how I wrote it all out, and then I just cut out all of my sticky labels and got them ready to label each one of my fabrics. All of the instructions for the actual dimensions for your pieces in the instruction. We are going to get everything ready and set for us to take to the sewing machine. So I'm going to start with F, and I'm going to take this over to all my cut pieces of fabric, and I'm going to look for F1 and F2. I know F1 is going to be black and F2 is going to be light. So here's my F1 black, and here is my F2 in my light fabric. So I'm going to just put those on top of my piece, and I'm going to put them on the side. Okay, now we're going to take E. E1 and E3 are both black. So here's my E1 and my E3, and my E2 is a light fabric. And so all those go together, and I'm just going to pile it right on top of the F pile. See that? So that's ready. So now we're going to do D. D is one is black, and D2 is light. Put them together and stack it. C1 is black, and my C2 is dark. So put those together, pile them up, good to go. Now we have B. We know that B3 is my light, so here's B3. B2 is dark, and B1 is a black. Put them all there and pile it up. All right, so now we have our last section is A. So we know everything left on the board belongs to A, but we want to double check. So we got A5, we have A4 is my light, A3 is a black again, A2 is dark, and A1 is black. And pile it up on top of everything, and now we are ready to go to the sewing machine. All right, so some things that I didn't mention in the beginning was thread. You need thread. So I use a black thread, and the finer your thread, the better the piecing will be, because there's so much of it that finer thread is better. So what I'm using here is an 80 weight, but 60 or anything lighter than a 50 would be excellent. All right, so back, we're gonna get piecing. Are you ready? Okay, so I have my A block, A section, and I'm gonna get A1 and A2. That's what I'm gonna start with. The thing about paper piecing is that you build it on the back and you stitch on the front. So it's a little bit of backwards thinking. So stay with me, all right, as we do this. So grab your glue, and on the back of, we're gonna locate A1, and on the back, we're going to just do a little bit of glue, just a little bit. And then you're gonna take your black fabric and you're gonna put it kind of centered on there. So if you take it up to the light, you can kind of see behind it. And you basically want it to cover the entire area and then some, because that will be your seam allowance. Can you see it? You see through it? Mm-hmm. All right, so we got our first piece on. Good job, guys. Okay, now this is the fun part. We're gonna take our ruler and we're gonna locate the line between A1 and A2. We're gonna place our ruler there, and we're gonna use it to crease back our, fold our line, and then we move it away. You don't need the ruler, but definitely helps. Okay, so now we got our paper folded back, and we're gonna take our 1/4 inch, and we're going to line up our 1/4 inch line on the fold of our paper. Oops. We're gonna place it there, and then we're going to cut. Okay, throw that on the side. Okay, so now we have our 1/4 inch seam allowance. See? Can you see through it again? Let's see. All right, so we made our seam allowance. So now we're gonna fold this back, and we're gonna flip it over. Okay, so now we're working from the back. We're gonna locate A2, and we are going to put it right on the edge there. Okay, and now we're gonna flip it, we're gonna hold it in place and flip it over. Okay, holding them together, and we're gonna take a pin, and we're gonna pin right on that line. Well, that wasn't on the line. Right on the line. And now we're gonna do the test. We wanna test it before we stitch it, okay? So we're gonna flip this back over. Okay, so we pinned it. And now we're going to flip this back over. And we're going to flip this over as if we had just stitched it. Now, the test is we wanna make sure that it covers the entire space of A2. So again, we're gonna look through the light and make sure it covers all of A2. See how it covers it? Okay, it looks like it does. So now we're gonna take it to the machine and we're gonna stitch it. So flip it back over and take it to your machine. So now we're going to stitch right on that line where my pin is, and we'll remove the pin as I stitch. You always start and stop right at the edge of the line. Okay, don't go past the line. You need to stop and start right at the end. Okay. So there's one tip that's pretty important when you're paper piecing. You want to use a small stitch length. So on my machine, if you can see here, it says 2.2, a 2, and I'm going to change my length. So I'm changing it to a 2.0, which is excellent. Anything between a 2.0 and a 2.2 is going to be perfect for stitching out our project. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and stitch it out. And what I like to do, I have a locking stitch on my machine and I use that. If you don't have a locking stitch, you can do one stitch backwards, right in place, and then we're gonna stitch it. I pull my pin out and I stitch right on my line. And I get to the end and I'm gonna do my locking stitch, or you can do a reverse stitch. Okay. All right, so I stitched out our first stitch on the line between A1 and A2. So when I flip my thing back like that, I have my 1/4 inch seam, just so you can see, and they're both stitched together. And now that my entire piece of paper is flipped over, I'm gonna go ahead and flip that fabric over. And this is where your wooden press comes handy, and you can press it in place. When I first started working in the quilt shop, I was like, what is that? What is it for? It doesn't even make sense. I learned it's a very essential tool to our sewing kit and use it so much. All right, so you can definitely take off the stickers anytime you want so that you don't have to do it later. But now we're gonna move on to A3, okay? Flip your paper back over, locate A3, and we want the line between A2 and A3. See this line? We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna take a ruler, we're gonna place it on that line, we're gonna fold it back, kind of move our ruler, make sure we get it on the line. Beautiful. And so now we're going to cut our 1/4 inch from there. So I'm gonna place my ruler on top of the fold. And ta-da! My seam allowance. And now I'm gonna take A3 and flip this back. Flip my whole paper over, take this guy, make sure it's right sides together, lay him right across there, and now I'm going to hold it in place, flip it back over, take my pin it right on that line between A2 and A3, I'm going to flip it back over. I'm gonna do the test. You flip it open as if I just stitched it. And look, this is a good test. See how this little bit is showing? It is just my seam allowance, but you wanna cover it. So I'm going to flip this back over, flip this over, pull my pin out, flip it back over, and I'm gonna just pull it down just a little bit more. The interesting thing is when you do paper piecing, if you flip it a certain direction, it leaves gaps. So it is very essential to do the pinning test before you stitch, or you're gonna have to rip it out. So I'm gonna hold it in place, I'm gonna flip it out, flip it over, pin it in place, flip it back over, we're testing again. And yep, covers everything, covers that whole space. You can see it on this side, covers the entire space. Great. So now I'm gonna flip it back over, flip this over, and take it to my machine. And we're gonna stitch it on this line that we just pinned, okay? All right, stitch that line. I'm gonna flip it over, Beautiful. Now we're gonna take our wooden press. We're gonna press it open. Okay. Now we're ready for A4. Okay. Take your ruler, put it on the line between A3 and A4. So that's this line. Use it, crease it, fold it back, place my ruler on top, and cut my 1/4 inch. Ta-da. Okay, I'm gonna open that up, flip it over, locate A4. Make sure it's right sides together. Okay, looks good. I'm gonna hold it in place, flip it over, pin it, flip it back over, test it out. Does it pass the test? Let's see. Yep, covers all of A4. Now we can take it to the machine and stitch away. Using that rotary cutter. All right, looks good. Now we're gonna flip it over and we're gonna open it up. And we're gonna get our handy dandy wooden press. Give it a good press. Beautiful. And flip it back over. Now for our the last section. What do? We're going to find the line between A4 and A5, which is this line. Put a ruler down, crease it. Okay. Put a ruler on the other side. Cut our 1/4 inch seam. Open that up, flip it over, find A5. I'm gonna put it down. So you just gotta be careful, like right, if you put it like with the short end, it's obviously not gonna cover. So you can kind of gauge that. Okay, put it down, hold it, flip it over, pin it in place. Flip it over, test. Let's see. So it just barely makes it. If you want, you know, you can kind of see it. If you want, you could scoot it down more, but either way. Okay. Actually, I will scoot it down just a hair. Flip it back over, pin it back in place. Test it one more time. Much better. Okay. Flip it back, reverse, take it to the machine. All right. Now we flipped it over. Put it back. And we'll take our wooden press and iron it down. And look, we got section A. I'm gonna flip it back over, and now we're gonna cut all the way around it. All right. I'm gonna, of course, remove all the stickers. There it is. Now you can take it to your iron and give it a good press. And you're ready for section B. Next step, we're gonna sew everything together. First, we're gonna take sections A and B and we're gonna sew them together here on the sides. So grab them and put them right sides together. All the way to the top, all the way to the bottom. And the same technique, we're going to put a pin in it. We're gonna test it out. We're gonna open it up. And we're gonna make sure that everything is just right. Okay, looks good. I'm gonna take it to the machine. And we're going to start and stop on the lines just like we did everything else. I'm gonna take it to our iron. Now we're going to flip it back over, and we want to now connect that section of A and B together with section F. See how it fits there? So again, right sides together, matching up the ends. And stick a pin in it. Get it straight in there. Now open it up. And that looks pretty good. So what I'm looking for when I open it up is that the ends are matching here, yeah? It's a straight line, and here too. Fairly straight line. That side, not so much, but we want to make sure that this lines up. Okay. Open it up, give it a good press, take it to your iron, give it a good press. All right, now we're gonna set that on the side and we're gonna take care of the other side. Now we're gonna connect C to D as we did A and B, okay? We're gonna grab them, we're gonna make them right sides together. Edges. Putting a pin in it. Testing it out by opening it up. Making sure it lines up. And a little bit more, but my edges kind of line up. Looks good. Open it up, give it a good press, take it to my iron, and flip it back over. Now we're going to connect that section to section E. Again, right sides together. And we're going to pin it. Test. And probably want to move it down a little, just a little bit. Sorry. Nope, too much wrong way, sorry. take it to the iron. Fabulous. Okay, now we're going to connect both sections, this half to this half by the center seam. Okay, so we're going to do right sides together. Matching up my points are meeting. For the most part. Use 2 pins. This is a long seam. And it looks pretty good. Okay. All right. Big reveal. There it is. Our paper piece crane. Trim that. Take it to the iron. Give it a good press. All right, last fun step that we want you to do before you return your crane. You're gonna rip all this paper out. Okay, it's really not that hard. You just kind of put your finger on it and it should pop right off. Let's see. Go where the paper tells you to go. Now the outside sections are easy because there's an opening. Phew, all right. Flip it back over. Give it a good old press. All right, I lied. That wasn't the last step. Now that you've peeled up all the paper from the back, go ahead and clean up your threads. Make it all nice. Just so those things are not sticking out all over the place. Just give it a good old snip. Blub, 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 blub. Okay. And when you're done with that, when you're done cleaning off all your strips, don't trim your block. Don't cut it, no matter how wonky. Don't trim your block, all right? Keep it just like it's finished product. And then, remember that piece of muslin that we had in the kit? I hope you didn't lose it, because this is for you to write your hopes or wishes or prayers on it. Like mine might be that my children will live past them being teenagers without their mom killing them. No, I'm just joking. But you can write whatever you want. Seriously, for your family, for yourself, that your health will continue to get better, that our world would be a better place. You can write whatever you want. Write that on here. You can write it with a regular pen, Sharpie, fabric pens. Just make sure that it's a permanent pen, okay? And what this square is for, we are going to quilt them inside of the quilt. So we'll probably put them on the back side of your block, and then we'll quilt it. We'll piece them all together and quilt it together. Because it's important that every crane has a wish and every crane has a hope. All right? And then you're gonna take that, you're gonna fold it, you're gonna put it in an envelope, and you're gonna send it back to us or bring it to us. All right? And once we collected 1,000 cranes, then we can start the next process in putting them all together. All right, thank you guys so much for joining me, and I hope you have fun with it. It's a different technique, but it's fun once you get going. All right, hope you have a good one. Aloha.